Okay. I'm not sure I can jump up and down and do what Lanny did, but I am really pleased to be here, and I want to thank Kevin and Melissa for inviting me. But I want to, I'm supposed to talk about sugar. So I'm talking about this one little tiny component of well-being. But I want to address a couple things Lanny talked about. There were some common themes in all of the people she talked about. Disease, cancer, etc. But one of those themes was anxiety. We live in a state of anxiety and fear in this country. Why? We're afraid of our own shadow because of what we're told. So I want to do a quick exercise here, because everyone has stress and everyone has anxiety, but we don't know how to deal with it. So I want to do a very quick breathing exercise with all of you to teach you how 2 minutes of breathing can change your physiology and your anxiety for the better. So everybody get comfortable. And this is called 4-7-8 breathing. It comes from the yoga tradition. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. You're going to hold for 7 counts, and you're going to breathe out for 8 counts through your mouth. We're going to do this 3 times. And what this is going to do physiologically is it's going to calm your brain, it's going to decrease your heart rate, it's going to decrease your blood pressure. It's as if I gave you a Xanax with no side effects. It can be used anytime, anywhere. But the key to this is practice every day. 2 times a day, 4 repetitions each time. As you practice, you increase the ability of your body to decrease stress and anxiety. So let's do it. Breath in for 4 counts, and I'll count. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, in through the nose, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Out for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I said we're going to do it 3, we're just going to do it 2. I have to get back to the topic. But this can be used anytime. Focus on the breath. When you focus your mind on the breathing and the feeling of air moving in and out of your mouth, you can't focus on anything else. Your brain only does one task at a time. When we say, quote, multitask, your brain is switching very rapidly from one task to another. It is not doing 2 tasks at once. So if you focus on only one task to relax yourself, that's all your brain can do. The other interesting thing that Lanny talked about is we're busy. Everybody's busy. Thanks for being here. What are we? We are human beings, not human doings. We need to take time just to be, meaning enjoy nature, enjoy one another, without your entire life being task-oriented. Okay? So, I'm going to talk about sugar. Why am I going to talk about sugar? Because sugar is one of the most detrimental things to our health that there is in this country. Everybody consumes sugar. It's in 80+% of our processed foods. It is everywhere, and it's a complete disaster. So, I got the privilege of being in Patagonia, South America the last 2 weeks, and this is what I got to look at. And I'll tell you what, it was the greatest trip ever. I never saw a television set. I never saw the news. You want to decrease anxiety? Quit watching the news. What does the news generate in you? Fear, anxiety, hatred. There's not a positive emotion that comes out of the news. I am almost 1 year with no news, no internet, no newspaper, no radio, 0. And I feel better for it. So, sugar, a metabolic disaster. Oh. Desiree's dressing me here again.
I'm trying.
Let's look at this list of diseases. Obesity, coronary artery disease, stroke, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, asthma, gastric reflux. Lanny talked about almost every one of those that I just listed. What do they all have in common? They are all chronic inflammatory diseases due to poor nutrition, overconsumption of carbohydrates, particularly sugar. These are diseases that are man-made. They're because of our Western diet. We call it the SAD diet, Standard American Diet, SAD, SAD, and it is sad. In fact, it's pathetic. Most of these diseases are preventable. These are preventable diseases, yet 80% of our healthcare dollars are spent treating those diseases. We spend $3.5 trillion a year taking care of these diseases. So, what's the problem with today's food? Too much sugar, and I'll show you how much sugar we're eating. Too many refined carbohydrates, too many manufactured foods. So we have this enormous food industry that says we're giving you value-added food. No, the best food comes from the ground. Mother Nature has supplied us with food for hundreds of thousands of years. We don't need Nestle and Kraft. You need a farmer's market. Too little natural fats, protein, and essential vitamins and minerals. We have processed the vitamins and minerals out of our food. Our soils, we have depleted of vitamins and minerals because of our farming practices. And that's why I'm so excited to hear Nick talk to you about good regenerative farming practices. So currently there are 30% more obese people in the world than there are thin people. That was reversed 15 years ago. There are 366 million people with diabetes in this country, or in the world. There's 30 million in this country. 1970, there was 2.2 million diabetics. 100 million Americans will have diabetes by the year 2050. This is a public health disaster. Children, 18.5% are obese, another 32% are overweight. And guess what? As they become adults, they'll be obese or overweight. The incidence of cancer, which is what I've dealt with in my 28-year career, is supposed to increase by 75% over the next 11 years. We're not going to have people to take care of this. Cancers associated with obesity: thyroid, colon, endometrial, esophagus, renal, pancreas, postmenopausal breast, early and aggressive prostate, liver, and gallbladder. Lots of cancers are associated with obesity. Increased risk of dementia has been linked to increased levels of blood sugar. You want to avoid dementia? Keep your blood sugars normal. Deaths from heart disease are projected to increase by 128%. Yeah, heart disease isn't going away. It's getting worse. The president of the American Heart Association last year at the national meeting said, I don't know how we're going to take care of all these people. 30.3 million people have diabetes. 39.8% of Americans are obese and climbing. Diabetes cost this country $245 billion in 2012. I don't have current numbers, they're not out yet, but I can guarantee they're higher. Now, diabetes, obesity all lead to this, metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is the manifestation of bad habits, including why do we get obese, why do we have diabetes. It manifests as heart disease, abnormal blood fats, high blood pressure, diabetes, dementia. Dementia is a preventable disease. You do not have to get dementia. You do not have to be in a nursing home at age 66, like Lanny's mom. Cancer. Cancer is a preventable disease. 2/3 of cancers are potentially preventable if you don't use tobacco products and you stay metabolically normal and lean. 2/3 of cancer. Polycystic ovary disease, that's a disease of women, leads to infertility, and then fatty liver disease. So it used to be the number one cause for transplants was alcoholic liver disease, and then it was hepatitis C. It's now fat in the liver, preventable disease. Does obesity equal metabolic syndrome? The answer is yes and no. About 70% of people who are obese have metabolic syndrome. About 50% of people who are overweight have metabolic syndrome. But here's the scary part. We call it the skinny fat. About 30% of normal weight people are metabolically abnormal on the inside. They're at just as high a risk of these diseases as someone who's obese or overweight. Now, we've always been taught that a calorie is a calorie. Calories in, calories out. Eat too much, exercise too little, and you're going to get fat. Eat less, exercise more, and you're going to get thin. How's that work for everybody? It doesn't. A calorie is not a calorie. A calorie burned is a calorie burned. Makes no difference where it came from. But a calorie eaten is not a calorie eaten. Every calorie we consume is different. So if I tell you to consume a calorie of olive oil, metabolically and hormonally in our bodies, it works very different than a calorie of sugar. So, a calorie is a calorie. Get that out of your mind. Never count calories. It's silly. It's silly. Obesity and diabetes is not a calorie problem. It's a hormonal problem. And I have a whole talk about hormones and obesity. But we are eating more calories than we were 25 years ago, about 187 in women and men, 335 in women, and about 275 in teens. That has stabilized since 2010. Between 2010 and 2018, we have not consumed more calories, yet we continue to get bigger. It's not about how many calories, it's about the quality of the calorie. So it's not the quantity of calories that leads to obesity and diabetes, it's the quality of the calorie. So if we were all consuming celery and carrot sticks, we wouldn't have a problem. But that's not what we're consuming. We're consuming enormous amounts of sugar in beverages, enormous amounts of sugar in processed foods. Here's what happened. 1977, the government, under the leadership of Senator George McGovern, came up with dietary recommendations for the American public. The low-fat diet was born, the biggest public health disaster in the last 100 years. It was an experiment on the American public that has gone completely wrong. Here's what happened. You can see in 1975, the tall bars are the prevalence of obesity. The little dotted line is carbohydrate intake. And look what happened. As our carbohydrate consumption went up, obesity went up. That is not coincidental. Here's what happened with fat. Government said, oh, we need to cut down on our fat. If we cut down on fat, nobody will have heart attacks. We continue to see more and more heart disease every year. So we cut down on fat. Look what happened to the obesity curve. Completely opposite. Fat does not make you fat. Sugar consumption skyrocketed. So it's estimated back in the 1800s we consumed anywhere from 2 to 10 pounds of added sugar per year. So added means it's added to a food. Fruit, vegetables doesn't count. Early 1900s, maybe about 20 pounds per year. Current sugar consumption. Anybody have any idea how much added sugar we consume in a year? Kinnick's got it. Triple that and you're close. 150 to 170 pounds of added, that's a good guess though. No, he's got it. It's not good. Everything in our grocery store has added sugar, okay? Look at these. Anybody remember these things? Snackwells? That was supposed to be a health food. Yeah, there's no fat. Thank God for that, right? So what they did is they took 2 grams of fat out but added 13 grams of carbs, much of it in sugar. Sugar. Coca-Cola. How many of you like soda pop? And you can raise your hands. I'm not here to judge, only to inform. You do? Okay. Forget stevia. So if you drink 1 can of Coke every day, you can expect to gain about 15 pounds a year. So I had a patient a number of years ago. I saw him. I fixed some arteries in his legs. Comes back a year later. Joe is 100 pounds heavier. I said, Joe, what happened? I gained some weight. Yeah, you gained some weight. I said, what do you do for a living? Oh, I work at the Pepsi plant. I said, how many Pepsis do you drink a day? 10 20-ounce Pepsis. That's 100 pounds in a year. I was going to go into these appetite hormones, but in the sake of time, I've kind of had to shorten this talk. It's usually about an hour. Melissa only gave me 25 minutes. I don't know what she expects. I'm not going to go into hormones, but to say that sugar disrupts our hormonal regulation of our neurohormonal feedback system in our brain. It results in too much insulin. Insulin is a fat-storing hormone. When your insulin levels are high, your body is being constantly told to store fat, and that's exactly what we do. So the key to weight loss is to bring our insulin levels down. Okay? So every calorie that we consumed is either burned as energy or stored. What regulates that? Insulin. Lower insulin levels, our body is being told to burn calories. We have energy, we feel good, and we're out there swimming, running, exercising, whatever you want to do. If we have high insulin levels, our body is being told to store fat. It's shuttling those calories into our fat. It's telling our brain, slow down, don't burn energy. Therefore, we get the whole glutton sloth thing. Remember, obesity was attributed to lack of willpower? Nonsense. It is not your fault. It's your hormones. So if your hormones are telling you to lay on the couch because you need to conserve energy because you have high insulin levels telling you to store it, that's exactly what happens. The only way to change that is to change how we eat. Now, these are real complicated slides. I'm not going to go over them, but I will tell you that the way sugar, particularly the fructose molecule of sugar, it's processed in our liver just like ethanol, alcohol. What does alcohol lead to? Fatty liver, insulin resistance, visceral obesity. Same thing with fructose. Chronic alcohol exposure, chronic sugar/fructose exposure. They lead to high blood pressure, abnormal heart, abnormal blood fats, pancreatitis, obesity, abnormal fat deposition in the liver, fetal alcohol syndrome in alcohol, fetal insulin resistance in too much sugar, and they're both addictive. They're both addictive. This slide shows that about 45% of sugar is consumed in sugary beverages. Sugary beverages. So when I work with people to try and get them off sugar, number one thing I look at is, what are you drinking? So there's a drink at Dunkin' Donuts. It's called a coffee caramel colada. And that coffee caramel colada has 920 calories. Okay, 920 calories, 32 teaspoons of sugar. What? Yeah, 32 teaspoons of sugar. This shows you how much sugar is in your drinks. You think juice is healthy? Juice is nothing but sugar. There's more sugar in a cranberry juice than there is in a Coca-Cola. Here's the scary thing. There's more sugar in some infant formulas there is in a Coca-Cola. Dr. Robert Lustig out at UCSF, he has a whole clinic of obese 6-month-olds because of the sugar in formulas. Yeah. So I was in Hawaii a number of years ago, and I went to this hotel, and they had 2 breakfasts. They had the typical American breakfast, and then they had the Japanese bento breakfast. Let's look at the American breakfast. Juice and cereals. Cereals are nothing but dessert, okay? They're loaded with sugar. So we've been sugared to death just from the first 2 offerings on the American breakfast. And then we have waffles, pastries, pancakes, sugar, sugar, sugar. And then we have Bloody Marys or mimosas. Fermented sugar in the form of that alcohol plus sugar on top of it. If you look at the Japanese breakfast, we have an egg omelet and a half a papaya, broiled salmon, miso soup, pickled vegetables, ume, which is a starchy vegetable, teriyaki, nori, and steamed white rice. There's not a bit of sugar in the Japanese breakfast. Guess who has the longest life expectancy in the world? The Japanese. Guess who has one of the shortest life expectancies in the world for developed countries? The United States. If you think we have a good mortality rate compared with the rest of the world, think again. There's this Organization of Economically Developed Countries. There's 31 countries in there. We're 27th on the mortality list, right behind Cuba. Cuba, yeah. So, you can make the choice. You can eat the typical American diet on top, Or you can go to the grocery store and farmer's market and eat these beautiful, wonderful fruits and vegetables provided by, guess who? Mother Nature. It's your choice. It's your choice. So, the more carbohydrates we eat, the higher our insulin levels. The higher insulin levels, the more fat we store. Fat cannot be burned with chronically high insulin levels. The only way to do that is get back to a natural diet. Low in refined carbs, no added sugar, fresh meats, eggs. And then I want to address real quickly this whole grain thing. Grains are nothing but carbohydrates. I don't care if they're refined or whole, they're still carbs. I am not a big whole grains guy. They're still carbohydrates. Let's look at a box. So you'll notice on labels in a box, they give you the recommended daily allowance of fat, carbohydrates, protein, and then you get down to sugar, and there's the amount of sugar, but it doesn't tell you what the percent recommended daily allowance is, does it? You have no idea what that means. The sugar industry lobbied to not have that put on labels years ago. So I want to tell you what that means. The recommended daily allowance for added sugar, according to the World Health Organization, is 6 teaspoons per day. 1 teaspoon is 4 grams. That's 24 grams of sugar each day. 24 grams. That's it. So, real quickly, we're going to go on a little virtual shopping tour here. I got 3 meals worth of food at that one basket right there. So we start with breakfast. As a kid, I loved Fruity Pebbles. Okay? Good for you, lots of vitamins and minerals. See, it says 11 essential vitamins and minerals. Unfortunately, they're added, they're not very bioavailable, and you're better off eating real food. But this has 9 grams of sugar. Okay, 9 grams. That's a third of my daily allotment in one bowl of Fruity Pebbles. But I have grown up, sort of, and I need to buy something that's good for me. Whole grain granola. Good. You're getting twice the sugar you get in Fruity Pebbles. 17 grams of sugar. That's 2/3 of a day's worth of sugar in one bowl of cereal. Of course, we're not going to have just cereal. We're going to wash it down with a juice. So I've got a 15-ounce juice here, and it has another 35 grams of sugar. Okay, that's 8+ teaspoons of sugar. So I've had cereal and juice, and I've had double my allotment of daily sugar, just in breakfast. This whole thing of cereal and juice for breakfast is complete silliness. We need good fats and protein for breakfast. Eggs, a nice piece of fresh meat, and 2 vegetables. No sugar. But I saw the commercials for Yoplait, and they got these little 100-year-old women who eat yogurt. Must be good for me, right? Nope, it's just another 6 teaspoons of sugar. 6 teaspoons of sugar. 18 teaspoons of sugar for breakfast. How many of you think that's good for you? No. So I'm going to have lunch, and for lunch, I am in a hurry today, so I'm going to heat up this can of soup. That can of soup is creamy tomato, bacon, and cheese. Now, that says that's 2 servings. I'm going to eat the whole thing. So I'm going to eat that whole thing, and I'm going to get another 6 teaspoons of sugar out of that. Yeah, Kinnick, it's blowing them away. 6 teaspoons of sugar. Yeah. But then I'm going to have this naked juice, okay? It's called the Green Machine Smoothie. It's got kiwi and apple and bananas and papaya and spinach and broccoli and another 13 teaspoons of sugar. It's green, but when you squeeze vegetables and fruit and you drip out the juice, you're only getting the sugar. You're not getting everything else. Eat the real food. So for dinner, I like ribs. So I'm going to go home and make some barbecued ribs. Barbecued ribs, what do you put on it? Of course, barbecue sauce. Barbecue sauce. So if we look at this, 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce has 4 teaspoons of sugar. 4 teaspoons of sugar in the sauce. And of course, I'm going to wash it down with a Mountain Dew. 19 teaspoons of sugar in that Mountain Dew. So when I go through my day, I've had no sweets, I've had no snacks, I've had what might be pretty ordinary for an American to eat, and I've consumed over 60 teaspoons of sugar. That's it. So be cognizant of sugar in your food. Avoid all food with sugar. And what does that mean? It means go to the produce section and walk out the store. Okay? Buy from farmers markets. Buy from Iowa Food Co-op. Buy meat from people like Nick Wallace. Do not be coerced in the marketing that's marketed to you on TV and the radio. Buy only what Mother Nature intended us to eat. Thank you.